Hello everyone, my name is Vera and I am currently completing my bachelor's degree in human kinetics at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. On this channel, I will be talking about a variety of topics including health and wellness and in exercise sciences. Today, I will be covering overtraining syndrome. Overtraining syndrome is something that typically occurs in elite athletes, although it is rare. There's a few different ways you've probably heard of overtraining syndrome. Two different other ways that we call this syndrome would be burnout, which is probably the most commonly used name, or sometimes it is referred to as unexplained underperformance syndrome. The reason for this is because someone who is experiencing overtraining syndrome underperforms during a time in which their performance should not be decreased because they are training, and the reason for this underperformance is unknown. To be diagnosed with overtraining syndrome, you have to show decreased performance persisting despite having rested. So let's just say you were starting to not show any improvement in your training and performance. So you take a week off and then you come back and you're still not doing well in your performance. So another characteristic of overtraining syndrome is disturbances in mood. So oftentimes the athlete will feel very low, depressed, irritable, or have lots of anxiety. The third characteristic needed to diagnose an athlete with overtraining syndrome is the lack of any other explanation for their underperformance. Let me clear up what I mean exactly by underperformance. So when an athlete is training, they have a certain level of performance. So let's just say for them it is very easy to complete a 2-minute plank, a 10-kilometer run, they're able to do 20 push-ups, and these are things the athlete can do. They're measurable performance outcomes. When someone is underperforming, they would no longer be able to do that 2-minute plank. They would feel very tired and potentially unable to complete that 10-kilometer run that they used to be able to do, and so on. So we know that an athlete is underperforming when they can no longer accomplish what they are normally capable of doing. This is very concerning for an athlete, especially an elite athlete where this is their career, because when you're training, you shouldn't be getting worse, you should be getting better. And therefore, it's important to track how you're feeling and make sure you do not get this syndrome. Symptoms that are associated with overtraining syndrome include fatigue, depression, loss of motivation, insomnia, irritability, agitation, bradycardia, tachycardia, hypertension, restlessness, anorexia, weight loss, lack of mental concentration, heavy, sore, stiff muscles, anxiety, and awakening unrefreshed. What I mean when I say awakening unrefreshed is that when someone wakes up in the morning after a full night of sleep, they still feel super, super tired. So after resting, they don't feel better, basically. The actual causes for overtraining syndrome unfortunately still remain unclear. There are quite a few different proposed hypotheses for what might be happening within the body that would cause overtraining syndrome. If you would like, you can read the article that I used as a source for this video and look at those hypotheses. For the sake of this video today, I will not be talking about them since they haven't been proven entirely. There are 3 different types of overtraining syndrome. So the first one is called functional overreaching. This happens over a shorter period of time. So basically over a span of a day to a week where they would not feel rested after resting and their performance is not as good as usual. It's not as concerning since it's only a temporary decrease in performance, and after they do rest for over a week, their performance goes right back to normal. The second type of overtraining syndrome is called non-functional overreaching. So this type of overtraining syndrome happens over a longer period of time. It's normally over the span of a few weeks to up to 2 months. Basically, what happens is that the athlete not only feels unrefreshed and not rested after multiple weeks of rest, they also have the other symptoms such as depression that accompany it. So the third type of overtraining syndrome is actually just called overtraining syndrome. So this is an extreme version of the non-functional overreaching syndrome that we mentioned earlier. So the length of time in which performance is decreased is much longer. It has to be over 2 months of decreased performance, and it is associated with even more physiological, psychological, neural, immune, and endocrine responses that are not good. They're negative outcomes. I'm not going to go into the exact details of that. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of studies around this level of overtraining syndrome, since it would be extremely unethical to induce this state in an athlete. Now that we've discussed how diagnosis for overtraining syndrome works, the different types, and the symptoms that go along with this condition, I will discuss how you can prevent this from happening. So from the paper that I read and from scientific literature, the advice that they give is basically to keep track of the amount of training that you're doing, and also continuously measure your performance. So check in with yourself and see if you're performing as well as you normally are, and also keep track of your mood. So if you're starting to feel very low and depressed, it might be a good clue for you to slow down on the training and see if that helps. So if you're an athlete and you're starting to feel a very, very low mood, and you know that you train more hours than the average person, which most athletes do, maybe slow down and train a little bit less. Maybe tell your coach how you're feeling. And if after maybe a week of training less, you feel a little bit better, then you've solved the problem and avoided overtraining syndrome. Of course, if you are truly concerned that you might be experiencing this, I do advise you talk to your coach, a health professional about this, such as a kinesiologist, your family doctor, and I would recommend a sports psychologist would be very helpful if you think you're experiencing this. Now, from my personal experience, and I'm going to give you now, this is my opinion on how to manage and avoid overtraining syndrome. So everything up until now has been backed by peer-reviewed scientific studies. So from my personal experience, I was an elite athlete when I was younger. So I was a competitive figure skater, and at 14, I had to retire from my sport. I was injured and skating on an injury for a year, and I was definitely experiencing burnout symptoms for maybe over a year, and I didn't know that that was what I was experiencing because I was quite young. I started to experience those symptoms around when I was 13 years old, when I started to train about 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. So if you want to know around what numbers it takes to get this syndrome, I would say it's basically a full-time job. So if you're the average person, I wouldn't be too worried about this. However, what my personal advice, if you are not an elite athlete, but you still feel a lot of fatigue and low mood, and you have recently increased the amount of exercise that you're doing, my advice to you would be to take things slow. I think the biggest mistake that people do is they say, okay, I want to start exercising, I want to be healthy, and then they jump straight into it, and which is great. But if you went from sitting down all day and not really moving around, and suddenly you're spending 2 hours at the gym every day, working as hard as you possibly can, that can actually hurt your body. That's how you get injured. That's how you can start to feel more tired than is helpful for your day-to-day life. So basically my advice around any concerns of overtraining syndrome, and if you're getting into exercise or currently exercising, is basically increasing your workload very, very slowly. So when I was a figure skater, I worked up to 4 hours of training per day over the span of a decade. I started training when I was 4 years old and I stopped when I was 14. So please keep that in mind when you're training, that really have to start slow. You know, it's okay if you only start with 15 minutes a day, and to really do small increases per week or per 2 weeks or per month. Whatever feels right, stay very in tune with how your body feels. And also, if you're really uncomfortable and unsure, having a personal trainer guide you through this, or a kinesiologist, someone who knows about exercise sciences, would be very helpful. I know it's COVID right now, so if you're kind of in this situation, I am offering personalized exercise programs and health consultations online through Zoom, so you can check out my link below to my website, and I would be happy to help you safely exercise and achieve your goals in a very efficient way. Thank you for watching my video. I hope this was helpful. Since I'm just starting this channel, I would really, really, really appreciate it if you commented down below and gave me some advice on how I can improve the video. Was I stuttering a lot? Did what I was saying make sense? Was I not clear enough? I would just really, really love some feedback and advice for how this went. So yeah, if you could let me know what you think, good or bad. I need criticism. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you later.